It's always good to talk college football over 100 days out until the season begins, and that's where we bring in Chuck Oliver of 680 The Fan and the Chuck Oliver Show. Chuck, really appreciate the time as always. I know Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated is reporting that the 25 signee rule yearly is probably going to get changed from the D1 Council. How do you think that's going to change college football, and particularly in the Southeastern Conference?
It will help the haves and the folks who have, and by the way, what I'm about to say is not a negative thing, who have the coaches and the programs who have, quote, gained the recruiting system. I'm talking Kirby Smart specifically, and I'll just give you an example. He recruits literally better than anybody in America, but it's Ohio State, Bama, et cetera. Roster churn, Kirby has literally applied an NFL principle to his roster. He's brought in more players on scholarship over the previous 4 classes than any other program in America, 104 kids. What he does is he gets them in, it's like a mini camp, or maybe it's like a 1-year free agent, and then he will process them right out. And because when even the Georgia staff will misevaluate a kid, then the Georgia staff will say, all right, well, let's see if we can evaluate better with another kid. And so the ability now to really churn your roster, the coaching staffs that are better at evaluating right now, it will be even more of an advantage for them going forward.
Chuck, I remember us talking at SEC Media Days last year, and by the way, we're 2 months exactly from that day coming up in July.
Bring it on, brother.
And you told us that, first of all, people down in Georgia love Sam Pittman. They love just his persona, his vibes. But you told us that he was a good evaluator of talent, especially in the offensive line. What have you picked up from Arkansas to this point, getting to 9 wins, a quick turnaround from going 0 in the SEC back-to-back years under Morris? How quickly has Sam Pittman turned the right? And did it kind of shock you and some other college football analysts when you look at what's happened at Arkansas?
I'll say just if you drop that in a fishbowl by itself, heck yeah, man, so surprising. He did it so quickly. And what I'm talking about is specifically what you mentioned there, the offensive line. Now, I know he is a whisperer, and he can walk up and just, lay hands on a kid and suddenly he's better. That's what we want to say. That's not true, though. There is no unit in college football, secondary and offensive line, okay? Those are the 2 units that more than anything else, if one kid breaks down, the whole thing goes to, kerplooey. The offensive line, more than any other unit, though, on the entire team, you can't force it. There is no shortcut. It ain't quick. You have to plant it, water it, let the sun come down. You can't just stand over it and yell, grow. I'll be dang if that didn't happen in Athens when Kirby got there. His first season was 16. By 17, I'm looking at that offense. And Kirby, literally the first words out of his mouth, go back and watch his introductory press conference, quote, "We got too many little guys." He was talking about the offensive line. He got that thing turned around in like 10 minutes. And I said, I don't remember saying this. Sam Pittman has done the same thing. And it wasn't just a little bit bad at Arkansas. It was Frank Ragnow and like 4 guys. That was the offensive line. And it was as bad as I've seen at a major program. And Arkansas is a major program. Like Vanderbilt's not, Arkansas is. Major program with some history, some heritage. It's as bad an offensive line as I remember if you go back 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's really, really good, and they big.
Yeah. Chuck, from your perch in Atlanta, what effects are you seeing? Because I think it varies at the different outposts in the conference. How is NIL affecting things on that side of the conference? What are you seeing at Georgia? What are the stories and the tweets that are coming out? How has it affected recruiting, and what are you seeing, particularly in college football, with the NIL and the impacts it's having now, 12 months in?
Oh, every nightmare prediction about the Wild West and all that. The actual principles involved in those doomsday predictions about what would happen, all of those are 100% spot on. Now, it's not doomsday, and it's not nightmarish and whatever else. Like I said, it'll be $1 million deals. Well, okay, it is $1 million deals, but we still have the sport. It's the same stuff as you've got a program who, like, for instance, Georgia, who, when Name, Image, Likeness debuted, they were on top of it. You had a program like LSU that was not and had to sort of regroup. Georgia Tech, which is, I don't know, about a tee shot and a 4-iron from where I am right now. smartest people in the state. They screwed up name, image, likeness at the start. They underestimated what it was, and they still haven't gotten sort of, all the gravel smoothed out. There are so many programs who looked at it from the lens of what is allowed, what is good for the sport, what's good for the kids, what's good for the program. Then there are coaches and staffs and programs who said, yeah, I'm not going to consider what the big picture ramifications are. I'm just going to make sure that we have our collective in place and we're signing studs. Tank Bigsby, the day that Bo jumped into the portal before he left for Oregon, day he's in the portal, I think it was like maybe the next day, it was all but done. Tank's in the portal and he's leaving too. And I was like, yeah, I get it. And then name, image, likeness happened. And now Tank can't get enough of the Plains. Mm-hmm. It's real. It's purchasing players. And this is the big difference. Last summer, it was about enticing future recruits, like the Miami booster who put out $500 a month to every player. That was to lure future recruits. You know what it is now? It's players who win the Bolitnikoff Award saying, I got a season eligibility. I'm up for bid. Mm-hmm. That's what it is now.
Free agency has come to college football. So you mentioned smoothing out the gravel. I try to equate it to the old adage of putting the toothpaste back in the tube. The NCAA is trying to give guidelines, threatening enforcement. If you were the czar, if you could make some adjustments here to NIL, what would that landscape look like according to Chuck Oliver?
Well, they're going about it in probably the right way. They're going to go after the boosters. They're going after the part in the equation who isn't the university employee and who isn't the player. Not the coach, not the player. Let's go after the third party. And so that's kind of what it appears the angle is right now. I can't believe Sankey and Klyavkov went up to D.C. I was like, all these people trying to get elected in 6 months. You got the Russian president on a killing spree. We got inflation and you're going up there to talk about make things easier on you.
Yeah.
I don't know that there are going to be guardrails. Here's the one thing you can do is if we go back 10 years ago when we all looked at that Northwestern quarterback, it was King Coulter. It was like, you're evil. You're going to ruin the sport. When he's like, why don't we just be employees? Once the players become employees, now you can collectively bargain stuff. And they can agree to caps. Right now, they're just people out there that Vanderbilt or Washington State or Arizona looks at and go, we are going to limit what you can get through name, image, likeness, or the NCAA. You can't do that. That's what it is. Oh, yeah, it's illegal. Yeah. So that's what the NCAA has recognized now.
Yeah.
Talking with Chuck Oliver this morning. Chuck, the ESPN released a number of different games coming out on the opening of college football season. We got Georgia against Oregon at 2:30, at least our time on ABC, and then the big one, Notre Dame at Ohio State. Marcus Freeman, a homecoming for him of sorts, a former Buckeye. That is going to be a really seductive game. I know that we're both in SEC country, but what do you think about some of these week one matchup that we're over 100 days out from?
Enjoy them because a lot of the neutral site paycheck games, those are going away. But the on-campus stuff, gimme. I think Marcus Freeman's going to get dropped into a wood chipper. Doesn't that seem like just a bit much to debut with?
Yeah. And
it's a great program with a lot of talent, and I can give you 15 more great things that are true. And that's not going to matter much. The Georgia-Oregon game, this is the funny thing. I don't know when it was, maybe before their spring game or something. I was talking about the Georgia schedule. And the point I was making was shame on their traditional rivals because after the Oregon game, they don't have their toughest game of the season until game 11 against Kentucky. I'm like, shame on Florida, shame on Auburn and Tennessee, all that. I said after the Oregon game, I don't know, like a week later, the line came out 14.5. And I was like, okay, so the game that I said, hey, if they can get through after Oregon, 2-touchdown favorite. I was like, never mind. Take that whole thing away. They don't have a tough game the whole year.
And on that note, after Georgia beat Alabama and dethroned Nick Saban and won the national championship, their second since 1980, I know Stetson Bennett was the hero. The defense stepped up. What is the feeling now in Athens under Kirby Smart? Is it a sigh of relief, or has there just been more hunger that's been added to that fan base and that football team?
It's weird. If you've always been either kind of good to really good, but never in your lifetime had a title, or at least not one that you can understand, that you weren't able to conceive and process, so like the 45-year-old Georgia fan, I was alive, were you? The last time they had a title. There's a weird thing, and I'll say this just because I'm in the area. I grew up as a Braves fan, grew up in Atlanta. That 95 World Series, I didn't enjoy it enough. I really, because it was almost like a pressure valve that you released. I'm transparent. I'm an Auburn fan. That 2010 title, it was almost like a pressure valve. Oh, finally. The second one is when you really enjoy it. And so I think in Georgia, that could be, 8 months from now. So the Georgia, it was a lot of relief, more so than joy. And so now they've got around all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But it's just a weird dynamic when you've always been, one of the haves, but never had a title, and now they've got one. So I honestly, the second one is a totally different experience. So I'm going to have that, something to look for.
Chuck, expansion's coming soon to the SEC. We know Texas and Oklahoma are joining the conference. What should the landscape look like as far as divisions, who plays who, pods, all of that conversation from your perspective? How would you organize the league once those two teams join?
Yeah, the pods, you used the correct word there. And the next one, pods are for scheduling, not standings. It's not like you're going to have, 4 like semifinals in the SEC from the 4 pods. It's just for process of scheduling. I think that comes first, and I think it works, and I think it's awesome. I think that, I said I'm an Auburn grad. As one of the 2 programs, Tennessee's the other, who gets the joy to play Auburn and Alabama every year. What else you got? So the pod system, I think everybody can agree with, but that's just while the conference is where it is. I don't know what happens going forward, but you're Sankey, and you've seen some of his comments recently. I don't know, dude. Go Game of Thrones. Just go to 20. Go to 24. Just start picking off teams. Tell Clemson right now, we will wait till 2036. You're going to snap your fingers. And suddenly, I remember the A&M and Missouri announcement like it was yesterday. It was a decade or 11 years ago. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the SEC continues to expand and it's really long-range plans that you could have an entire TV contract come and go, and then Clemson and Florida State are ready. Now, the one little, fly in the ointment there is I was told, now this has changed, but I was told before this round of expansion, that was about 3 years ago, that the SEC is really loath to add a school in a state where they already have a presence. And so Oklahoma fits, North Carolina fits, some other Texas, obviously they were already there. But the funny thing is, as bitter as those 2 schools are, and the fact that the only thing Texas A&M did to jump ahead of the Longhorns was join the SEC, Sankey looked at A&M and said, get in line. Yeah. You will vote. This will be unanimous. And I'll be dang if the Aggies didn't do it.
Yeah, he bent their will. So is there a 4th division to college football coming? Does the Power 5 break away? What does the kind of global landscape of college football look like, say, 3 years, 5 years from now?
Yeah, it's kind of the process of like Sankey saying, the SEC may break away, told you, or Power 5 or the Power 4 or whoever it winds up being. It wouldn't surprise me if there is a 64-team actual football conference, and then everybody else plays for whatever. And maybe it's the European soccer, and you can, after a 2-year cycle, you can get up into the big boy football. But divisions and conferences and all that kind of go away, and you just have real college football with whatever, 60, 65 teams. Well, you can work out the scheduling. Mm-hmm. And then you have Rice. And Rice, you play in this other thing. Yeah. That's coming, I believe.
Do you have to break away from the NCAA, or can you just create another division?
That could happen. And Gene Smith, he would, no, I'm just throwing stuff out. No, you weren't. You've already got a feasibility study planned.
All right. Chuck, great stuff. We look forward to catching up with you at SEC Media Days and more college football conversations down the road.
All right, amigos. Love it.
All right, Chuck Oliver from Atlanta joining us here on the Morning
Partners
Rush.
at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA playoffs, fights, and even next season's futures. And don't forget that the MLB is back as well. Who are you picking to win the World Series? BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to join and use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.